What's up guys, Handish here, and today we've got an interesting tidbit of news with some discussion about the future of exclusive content in Destiny 2 moving forward. So let's jump straight into it. Firstly, something interesting about Sony's exclusive deal with Bungie. So Destiny players have long disputed the rights and wrongs of PS4 exclusive content in the game, and it's kind of something that we've just come to live with in Destiny because it's kind of been the norm for such a long time. And it's interesting in itself because gamers are very vocal these days. Issues like microtransactions, talk about the Epic Store a lot recently, and just look at what happened with Star Wars Battlefront a couple of years back. Yet, while they may not be the same thing, the normalization of PS exclusives in Destiny does mean that it's kind of a lesser discussed issue in this community than it perhaps would be in another one. However, something new has been reported on by many outlets over the past day or so, and on the most recent Kotaku split screen episode, Jason Schreier was talking about the Wave Splitter issue last week, of course where Xbox and PC players illegally got access to a PS4 exclusive early, and since then of course it's been disabled, which is kind of humorous in itself. But it did, however, go on to mention that in conversations with Bungie employees, it was indicated very strongly that Bungie actually wanted to pursue character transfer for Destiny 2. So going back in development, it was apparently Bungie's goal to allow players to at least hop platforms and kind of take their character progress with them. But according to Schreier, Sony stepped in as part of their contract with Activision and Bungie and actually disallowed this functionality to be in the game. So pretty curious stuff. Sony actively stopped Bungie from implementing this feature into the game, and that's pretty questionable. We'll talk about that more in a moment. But now there is the issue of character transfer. So hey, maybe you wanted to move PS4 to PC at some point, but apparently Sony says no, according to Jason Schreier, despite Bungie actually wanting to let players do this. Now another discussed feature is cross-save, and this would remove the need for transfers, or really they'd kind of be the same thing because in theory, you would be able to simply play your characters on any platform. And cross-save is something that players have spoken about for quite some time, and while it may not be super appealing or required for everyone, there are a lot of players that would really enjoy or benefit from this feature. Again though, if Sony have reportedly said no to character transfers, then that blanket decision also stops cross-save from being a thing as well. So why did this happen? Well, of course the main reason is that Sony want to protect their platform. Sony has got more consoles out there, more players than any other platform for Destiny at least, and so there is kind of a little direct benefit to Sony if crossplay exists. If anything, they could lose players to other platforms. And let's remember, in return for the exclusive partnership that Bungie, Activision and Sony have had, Sony have been running PS4 campaigns featuring Destiny, and that means a huge amount of marketing for the game, trailers on big stages, and it's safe to say that for Bungie, it is a very good thing to have your game be a flagship product on a given platform. However, it does end up kind of being a crappy thing for the player base, to deprive players of functionality that Bungie essentially already has. So on the subject of cross-save, when you load up Destiny, your player data, characters, weapons and all of that stuff actually loads from Bungie.net, so Bungie in theory could relatively easily read your profile and load it onto any of the platforms. And in one way, the Wave Splitter thing that happened last week even helps to demonstrate this. It's literally in the game. This content is there on all of the platforms, but it's blocked to PC and Xbox players. And that may sound a little bit severe or almost salty, you know, when you say locked away like that, but it is simply the truth. It's just how it works. And as I've said, the result of some of these decisions, I think, do end up feeling kind of anti-consumer. Of course, not for the PS4 players necessarily, outside of the cross-save functionality, because Sony are ensuring that when you make the PS4 purchase, you are getting the best value version of the game. However, in the process, they're kind of directly and consciously deciding to limit the features or content of another platform in order to ensure the highest level of appeal for Destiny PS4 players. Of course, though, for everybody else, you end up paying the same price, but you don't get that content until the next major product arrives, because in the case of exclusives, let's remember that these are timed exclusives. So there are going to be some mixed opinions on this. Some players won't necessarily think it's very important, while other players will probably feel that this really sucks, right? So be sure to let us know how you feel down below, especially on the potential cross-save functionality being canned, because Sony didn't really like that. But also, as we move forward, I'd be curious to get a general sense of what players think. And I should mention, with me maining Xbox primarily, this isn't a discussion of console wars, you know. I do play, and would especially play on all platforms if cross-save was a thing, but equally, if for example these were Xbox exclusives, we'd definitely still be having the same conversation. I don't really think it's a battle of taking sides personally. But then of course the conversation does shift in some interesting ways. Bungie no longer have the resources and financial support that comes alongside the Activision partnership, partnership, so it's actually likely that Bungie are going to need continued partnerships like this to help market the game, but also to seek investment, gain new resources. And on top of this, I think Bungie could also benefit more than ever from microtransaction revenue in the game. And I think that does form part of the wider conversation, especially since things could change a little bit in the future. An interesting question is also one of how much do we need to actually support Bungie? Do we need to have some lenience and respect for the fact that they're going it alone now, they're producing and marketing D2 content on top of producing D3 stuff, and they have to pay an awful lot of people and keep a massive studio running? I think we definitely need to be mindful of that. At the same time though, on the subject of Eververse, I do think we've been seeing a gentle shift taking place when it comes to the store. So personally, I think, and this isn't me making accusations or even predictions, these are just purely my thoughts, but it wouldn't surprise me if we saw Eververse grow and try to be more profitable in the future. And I do think we're potentially seeing very early signs of that at the moment. Bungie removed the prismatic matrix going into this season, and that limits the possible Eververse knockouts on loot drops. At the same time, Bungie have indeed continued to offer more items for direct purchase with Bright Dust, but equally, that means we're spending more reserves and getting less of those freebies that we did see with something like the prismatic matrix. So that's one thing. But we're also seeing more appealing items kind of become direct purchase only. You know, if you take the Thorn Ornament, for example, it was limited time, and you have to actually pick it up with cash. And on top of this, Bungie are promoting more direct purchases a little bit more on social media and stuff like that. So honestly, I think it's kind of shifting and nudging in a direction that may encourage more spending. And for me personally, I dislike RNG and microtransactions together, and so do a lot of other people, and that's why there are these kind of new European laws on things like loot boxes. Direct purchases, though, are very different in that respect, and for me, while I'm not a raging fan of Eververse or even microtransactions in general, at least these items do have that decision point. Do I want to spend X amount of money on a skin for this gun or for an emote? You know, is that something that I really need? And to me, you know, if I look at the Thorn Ornament, for example, I say to myself, yeah, that looks really cool. And while I could instantly purchase it right now, a part of me kind of goes through that process and says that I don't want to spend that money, you know? I technically bought Black Armory for nearly the same cost, and I just kind of say no. So for me personally, if some players are comfortable making these direct purchases and enjoy those items, and then Bungie can actually make some revenue, while still producing content that sits at the quality bar of the game right now on the whole, or in Forsaken for example, then frankly, I can live with that. But that's just my opinion, and as I've discussed, there are real issues here that our community should absolutely give feedback on. So be sure to go ahead and do that down below. So yeah, I wanted to discuss the news about how Sony have reportedly affected that Destiny deal, but I think it's also a good time to discuss how this could work in the future and generally get a better sense of how people in the community feel. These are definitely valuable conversations if you ask me, but for now guys, as always, I appreciate you tuning in. I'd love to hear your thoughts about those cross-save limitations, exclusive content for Sony moving forward, or any of the microtransaction stuff. But if you do have a rating for the video down below, then that is super appreciated as well. And if you're new to the channel and you do enjoy the conversation, be sure to hit subscribe if you want to keep up to date. You can also turn on notifications to keep posted on Destiny 2 content. We cover pretty much everything right here on the channel. For now though guys, as always, I hope that you have an awesome day.